Unit 6, the call of Abraham, a man, a nation, and a blessing to the world. Okay, so now we have arrived to Genesis chapter 12, and this is a massively significant and important chapter in the Bible as we'll go through. We'll look at it now, introduce, and we'll really dig into it in the next module. But look what it says, verse 1. Now the Lord had said to Abram, "Get out of your country, from your family, and from your father's house, to a land that I will show you." Verse 2 says, "I will make you a great nation. I will bless you and make your name great, and you shall be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you. I will curse him who curses you, and in you all of the families of the earth shall be blessed." Now, there's a lot going on in this verse, right? But this is what we call the Abrahamic Covenant. And so we're going to introduce it now and talk about it, and we're really going to dive into it in the next module. But this is so important. In fact, Greg Kokel says that this is the most important passage in the Bible regarding salvation history. Everything else God does to rescue man is based on this covenant. So this is going to be a very important thing to understand going forward. Well, let's look at some of the events that surround the call of Abraham. Okay, of course, his name isn't Abraham yet. God will change it later, right? His name's still Abram, right? So in verse 4, God calls Abram out of Haran, where we left off on the map, to the land of Canaan. There, obviously, when he gets there, Abraham comes and doesn't find a great land like he may have expected, right? He finds the Canaanite people there who are enemies, who are scary to him. And then verse 7, God comes and speaks directly to Abram, and he tells him when he gets there and sees that there's Canaanites in the land that God promised him, God comes and tells him that he will give him this land to his descendants. And that's where we see Abram. He builds an altar to the Lord. After that, we see this interesting episode where he goes to Egypt. So what he does, he continues south, and he knows there's a famine, and then he goes to Egypt. After going down to Egypt, right, we see this thing where he tells his wife Sarai to say that she's his sister, so that as a means of protection, so that they won't kill him and take her, right? But so which she does, and then she's taken into Pharaoh's house in Egypt, right? But God sends a plague on there, and then we find that Pharaoh finds out that she's actually Abram's wife, and he says, "Why'd you do that?" And he sends Abram and Sarah back up out of Egypt, and so we see him go back up. On the way back up, he rejoins with Lot, obviously his brother's son, Terah's grandson. So they head back up, and Lot is with them. And it mentions that they both have a lot of cattle. They both are wealthy in terms of that day, and they have cattle and stuff. And we see that there's actually some strife that happens between Lot's herdsmen and Abram's. And Abram says, "You know what? I don't want to have any strife. Lot, why don't you go pick where you want to go, and I'll go the other way." And so we read about that, and we'll stop right about there, and we'll pick up after that what happens there in the next module. But we can actually look at this as well. If we continue where we were, right? We started in Haran, and this kind of chronicles the assumed journey, right? It's not exact, but it's just the assumed journey of where they went. So they come down into the land of Canaan, right there. This is the trek when they go down to Egypt and come back, and then we see here, this is where Abram and Lot separate. Now, Lot goes towards the right side with the water. We'll look at that in the next module. And Abram goes to the brown part, which is actually, we'll see, is like another deserted area. So that's going to play a part going forward here. But what we've seen here is that God has called him out of Haran, and he has made a specific promise to him. So when we ask this question, this is going to be very, very important going forward. What is the Abrahamic Covenant? Okay, so we're going to go into this a lot in the next module, but just to give an understanding, a foundation now, there are three parts that are three phases that actually are part of the Abrahamic Covenant. And Greg Kokel does a really great job going into this in his study called The Bible Fast Forward. So he summarizes it really well. In fact, I'm just going to use his summary right here. Phase 1 is where God calls one man, Abram. Okay, we've seen that right now. The second one is that God promises to make a nation from him. And then third, all of this is in Genesis chapter 12, verses 2 and 3, the Abrahamic Covenant. Third, God commissions both the man and the nation to be a blessing to the rest of the nations in the world. So this is the essence of the Abrahamic Covenant, and it's going to inform everything that goes forward from here when it comes to salvation history. So that's Module 6. So what we're going to do now as we go into Module 7, we are going to now look at Abraham and Isaac and the beginning of a nation.